Recording in progress.
All right, we can start our meeting today. Let's start with that call to order and roll call.
Emily Lisborg.
Here, sorry.
No worries. Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Tim West.
I'm here.
Erin McClellan.
Here.
Tim Leonhardt.
Here.
And Melissa Dio.
Here.
Thank you.
Awesome, we can move forward. We have a public comment today. We can start with that from an unknown citizen, Steve Williams. Welcome to the front. And then, yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you for just a minute. See, it won't take much of your time. My name is Steve Williams. I'm an Oregon City resident, and I was a past member of the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I saw on your agenda that you were looking at your CIP list, and Thomas corrected me. I thought maybe this evening you were going to be prioritizing the projects on that list, but maybe at your next meeting you will be. But I just wanted to put the word in for your consideration for ranking the Clackamas Park boat ramp as a high priority in your process as you look through all the projects. You've got a lot of good projects on there, so I realize you've got a lot of competing interests, but I would point out to you that some of you will recall we had quite the public process input list as we built the Clackamas Park master plan. And the boat ramp ranked fairly high, if you recall. I took two excerpts out of it just to make my point. One of the questions was enhancing what elements of the park should be a priority in the new master plan. The boat launch was second only to the restrooms and its listing when you look at that. And the other question that struck me as being a good to point out the priority point was, what are the primary reasons you visit Clackamas Park? Number one was access to the river. Number two was to enjoy the outdoors. And number three was the boat launch. So, not to take more of your time, but from my perspective, and I know others that certainly I speak with, ranking the long-term replacement or enhancement of the Clackamas Park boat ramp would be high on my priority list, and I hope it would be high on yours as well as you put your list together for the city council or city commission to review. So, thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, we will open to questions. Does anybody have anything for Steve? I'll take one, Steve. Just to note, how many boat ramps or public access points do we have in Oregon City to the Willamette River? Do you know?
If I look at it from just an Oregon City perspective, you have Sportcraft, which is a relatively small ramp. I think I counted one time, I think there was 28 spots there, and that was before they started building the bridge. So it's down to some pretty limited numbers, and the places for the boats are pretty small. So it's a real challenge to launch there. The next closest boat ramp would be Meldrum Bar, which isn't really Oregon City. And then the next one that many people that fish up here launch at is Cedar Oak Boat Ramp, which is over in West Lynn. So we're really, I don't think I'm forgetting any boat ramps. I think there's really only the one that we have that's viable right now. The Clackamas Park ramp would open up not only the main river, but it would also open up the opportunity for people to utilize the Clackamas from Riverside Park and down, which they can't really do now unless they plan to take out at Meldrum. And I don't think if I was in a drift boat or something, I'd want to row out into the Willamette and then try to figure out how to get back into Meldrum.
Perfect, thank you. I just wanted to kind of get an idea out there. Any other comments or questions for Steve? Well, we always appreciate seeing you, Steve. We'll see you next month.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your meeting tonight.
Thank you. All right, next portion of our meeting is going to be the approval of minutes. We have two different approvals, the January 23rd, 2025 meeting, and then a second for the February 27th, 2025 meeting. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I think if with two, you've got to say specifically which one.
Okay, to the January minutes. I move to approve the January minutes.
Thank you.
Joyce Gifford here, I will second that.
Awesome. Can we get a roll call? Or a vote?
Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
Emily Lisborg,
Yes.
Tim West,
Yes.
Erin McClellan,
Yes.
Tim Lanehart,
Yes.
Melissa Dio.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And then can we get a motion to approve the February 27, 2025 meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the February 27th meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Awesome. And one more time, can we get a roll call vote?
Melissa Dio.
Yes.
I'll switch it up this time. Tim Lanehart,
Yes.
Erin McClellan,
Yes.
Tim West,
Yes.
Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
and Emily Lisborg.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
We are moving along. Awesome. Well, we can move forward to our presentations. We have the annual committee training by Jacob Wiley. Welcome back, Jacob.
Well, hello again. It's been a while. So I'll let Corey get my presentation up there.
Can you guys see that online?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So I'm Jacob Wiley. I'm the city recorder. I work upstairs here at City Hall. I don't know if you're all familiar with what I do for the city. I'm the elections official. I'm in charge of posting agendas for the city commission, and records management, which is probably the thing nobody knows that I do, is making sure that we're abiding by our public record laws and making sure we're keeping the things we're supposed to keep and letting us throw away stuff that we're ready to throw away. So that's what I do for the city. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide there. Tonight, I'm just going to kind of review some general public meeting requirements for committees and the role of the committees in the city. So Oregon Public Meeting Law requires that there's public notice for all meetings. The meetings must be open to the public, and minutes must be created for each meeting, just like you just approved. There's a couple things that come up with public meeting issues. Purely social gatherings are not public meetings as long as there's no deliberation on city business. So if you happen to meet up for lunch, just don't talk about Oregon City parks. Serial meetings can occur electronically and are also a violation. So the typical example of this is a reply all amongst your committee members. If you start having a conversation online back and forth, that technically is a meeting because it's a deliberation in chunks over time, and the public would not have been invited to see that meeting, especially if you're deliberating towards a decision. So those are considered a violation of public meeting law. The way we recommend you avoiding that is not replying all to your committee members, communicate through your liaison, and just refrain from replying all to emails with all of you in it. So the role of the chair in our committee structure was kind of like not the opposite of a strong mayor. So there's no special powers given to the chair. They cannot make a motion on their own. They can only second a motion. They should ensure that each member has an opportunity to speak, say go around the table, keeping the committee on task, efficiently move through the agenda. Hopefully this never comes up, but also they're in charge of maintaining decorum and intervening when necessary. So you should be respectful, be professional, avoid personal attacks, and respect the vote of the body even when you disagree. So no sore losers. The role of the vice chair, it's pretty simple. If the chair is unavailable for some reason, the vice chair steps in. I'll bring up too, in case both of them are gone, you will select an ad hoc chair for that meeting. So it would be one of the first items you do is like, oh, we have no chair and no vice chair. We'll just pick one. How to make a motion. You've shown that you know this well. You have discussion, a motion, a second. You can have further debate. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. The chair restates the motion if it's confusing in some way or it's been a really long time, say that second debate area took a long time, and then a vote. Another common thing is points of order. So these are just some extra stuff that I thought I'd bring up for Robert's Rules of Order. If there's some kind of an issue, someone can say, hey, I'd like to raise a point of order on this question. At that point, the chair would make a decision. And if it's unclear, the group can vote to make a decision. One of my pet peeves is a lot of folks will say, let's call the question. Technically, that's a motion that requires its own vote. So it's just something I bring up because I hear it a lot. Oh, let's call the question. No, that's a motion. If you want to follow the rules for that, it would be immediately ending debate after a motion is pending. The chair asks for a second on the motion. There has to be a 2/3 majority, and then it's basically followed by a vote. So it's a really kind of a motion to end discussion. If you don't like what the chair does, you can appeal the chair's decision to the group. Then you have a vote. Motion and a second and a vote. So there's different ways you can vote. The one that you did tonight for your minutes was roll call style voting, where you record each person's vote individually. There's also another kind called acclamation style. So it's the all in favor say aye. You have to ask for nays, and you need to ask for abstentions if you do it that way. And that's because Oregon law requires that the vote of the members is recorded in the minutes. And the only way we know every single person's vote is if you ask all of those questions. Types of answers, aye, yes, nay, no, abstention. That kind of comes up with conflicts of interest. For your committee, it's not such a big deal because Oregon's law about conflicts of interest is very financially focused. And since you don't make financial decisions, it's kind of moot. But I just like to bring it up because it's often a question. Potential conflicts of interest, you can participate, but you must state the conflict when it arises. So that means that it could be a conflict. So whatever you're voting on could, if you had a business, affect your business. And so you would have to announce that, but then you can keep participating and vote and everything else. It's just more of a notice, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable about voting on this. An actual conflict of interest would be the city's buying hammers and I own the hardware store that they're buying the hammers from, right? So I am beneficially gaining money from the decision of the group. So if it's an actual conflict, you cannot participate in the discussion or the vote, meaning you can't even talk about your recommendation on hammer types, even if you're an expert on hammers. You have to basically just sit silently and not participate. Another common question about minutes. If you weren't present for the meeting, you can still vote in favor of approving the minutes, even if you weren't there. Your vote in that case is not an affirmation that the minutes are correct. It's just a vote that you're approving the minutes as a committee. You have no need to abstain. Some other general things about ethics. No favoritism in your decision-making, no special privileges because of your position, follow confidentiality laws if they pertain to anything you're working on. Please don't use your position to profit somehow from something. No outside work that conflicts or interferes with your work here. There's state laws limiting for accepting gifts. It's $50 per person per year from a source. And you can't accept any money for doing your job on the committee. That's a new one that came up. I actually had to call the OGEC the other day about a gift card. For example, if a state agency was offering $50 gift cards to have Prac come and give testimony on something, you couldn't accept it because it would be accepting money for your service on Prac. There's no personal use of city property, so please don't go grab the lawnmower and go for a joyride. Please don't. And if so, if one of your colleagues does that, please report it to city staff. Oh, getting close to the end here, I wanted to remind folks that there is the board and committee orientation manual on our website. If you want to dig into that, more of detail of what I've been presenting on tonight, you can look through that. It's quite extensive. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
All right, we can open to questions for Jacob and anything you covered today. I will lead us off then. I just have a short one. I remember we had talked about it last year as well. For the gift accepting one, how does food interact with that? Does that have a monetary value or how is that decided?
Food is generally exempt.
Okay, that's what it is in the state as well, that they don't have that there, but I want to confirm that.
Good question.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good point.
It is hard for me to see the online hand waving portion, but Aaron.
You can end the show.
Tim, Joyce, does anybody have any questions that are on there?
I'm good.
You can end the screen share, then it's easier to.
I think most everybody did this last year as well.
Do you have any questions? Since you're new.
I think I watched the video
Oh, cool.
before.
The one from last year?
I think so. Yeah.
Does it look familiar?
Yeah. Also, we have similar rules at the community college, so.
Is this Clackamas Community College?
Yeah,
Oh. You know Katie Riggs then?
I do, yeah. I know Katie used to be a member of the city.
Great, as part of my chair rule then, I will keep with a speedy agenda and keep us on track.
All right.
And, thank you, Jacob, for coming today,
Jacob.
and have a great day.
Yep, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Tim, this is where you're gonna have to,
Add in.
ask
All
for
right.
an amendment to motion to amend.
Am I able to, because I can't make a motion?
What do I need
You
to?
have to ask for a
Oh,
motion.
okay, thank you. Then we need Jacob back in here. Now we have a question.
I was actually going to say, this is a great example for Jacob.
All right, we have an additional presentation today. I need someone to make a motion to amend to add in a presentation.
I'll make a motion to amend our agenda to add a presentation today.
I'll second that motion.
I will give time for discussion in case it is there. And then just to test it out, because it's fresh in my mind, let's try an acclamation style voting, just to speed this up. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any noes? Is there anybody abstaining from voting? All right, the motion to add a presentation passes, and now we will give the floor to Cecily for her presentation on the ORPA capstone presentation.
Exciting.
Welcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you might be able to take over. I don't know which one it is.
Be big on acclamation style voting. We're gonna go fast on those.
Harder when people are online.
Yeah.
I saw it for a second.
Can you guys see that online?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna play with this clicker just really quick. I think we've got it. All right, good evening, PrAC. As was already mentioned, my name is Cecily Rose, and I have the honor and the privilege of being the Social Service and Community Center Manager for the City of Oregon City Parks and Recreation Department. And tonight I am presenting on exactly what Timothy mentioned, and that is the ORPA, or Oregon Recreation and Parks Association Leadership Academy that I've been a part of, and the capstone project that I have chosen. Really, there's no ask tonight, but this is part of the engagement piece for my graduation that will take place on April 11th. In addition to that, we definitely want to open up like a feedback loop for this project if it's something that you guys would want us to move forward with as a department as well. Very grateful to be a part of this academy. It is a competitive process, so I applied, turned in resumes, that sort of thing. I definitely feel honored to be a part of it. It's brought to us by ORPA. They use the platform, the education platform from Portland State University, and then it is sponsored by Northwest Playground. I've had an abundance of support from our own city and our department as well, and I just want to thank everybody that's been involved with it. I'm clicking twice. My capstone project for my Leadership Academy is Bridging the Gap, creating an inclusive scholarship program for community recreation. go. When I had chosen my capstone project for this academy, there was many things that I considered, but I did look at commission goals. And goal number one for our current biennium is to create a collaborative environment to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, resulting in a safe, inclusive community and organization. I also looked at our department. I looked at our vision, our mission, and of course, our core values. Our mission statement is to serve the community. The core values are to be collaborative, engaged, respectful, transparent, and to be servant leaders. And our vision for the future is an inclusive, sustainable, and impactful agency. As you look at a capstone project, really the goal is to try to identify something that doesn't exist that you want to exist within your department, or perhaps to identify a problem or a gap and find a solution. And that's really where my capstone project came into play. Poverty has no barriers on age, and I just actually looked up a statistic because I couldn't recall it by memory, but 7% of Oregon City residents are considered at or below the poverty level. That is according to recent statistics from census.gov. There's some other wonderful statistics up here as well. 9.9% of Oregon seniors age 65 and above are below the federal poverty line, and 12% of Oregon's adults from ages 18 to 64 are at or below the federal poverty line. Those numbers are coming from the Oregon Health Authority. When I consider that, especially from my role as the community center manager, which is a very much senior-focused center, a lot of our funding, as you know, comes from the Older Americans Act. We serve nutrition based on ages 60 and over, transportation based on those same things, and a lot of the social service. What I realized within our department is that we have a robust and a wonderful scholarship program for youth, but we don't have one for adults, nor do we have one for senior recreation. So for me, as I identified that, a gap in scholarship offerings provided a great opportunity to improve inclusivity within our city and of course within our department. There were 8 steps to my scope and outline of my project. The most intensive was actually the research piece. I should mention that it is suggested to us that 80 hours of time is really utilized to complete our capstone project, and the research was a very large portion of that. For me, the second step would be updating our current application, of course, adding those adult programs, senior recreation, if we get to that place in approvals. Completing engagement and outreach, talking through feedbacks and edits, providing presentations to the community, of course, those approvals I mentioned. Once we get those approvals, then we would move on to marketing and advertising of a more inclusive and more robust scholarship program, and then the final part, which will of course be all of our favorite, which is hopefully one day implementing the project. Step 1, as I mentioned, was research. I do want to thank those organizations and jurisdictions that gave me an abundance of time. I was able to talk with experts from the city of McMinnville. They also provided me my mentor through this process. That is just part of the Capstone Project and Leadership Academy. In addition, I looked at the city of Tigard, particularly with them, their application. I thought their application was done very well as far as their scholarship program goes. Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District is a wonderful, they're actually CAPRA approved, lots of wonderful guidance, I'll say, just resources. They're unique in the sense that they actually have staff members that do this full time. They have such a robust and a large scholarship program that many staff hours are devoted to it. In addition, researched North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, Willamette Lane, and again, I did meet with every single division within our department to talk through what those hopes and dreams from our department actually looked like. In regards to research, I really wanted to leave no stone unturned. So I asked questions and researched all of these topics, everything from who was eligible for their scholarship programs, what programs were included, if there were any amounts or caps to their scholarship program. Sometimes, you'll see $100 scholarship for a $300 program, for instance, where others are offering the 100% scholarship. So just, kind of asking the why behind some of those things. Asked about their timelines, and what I mean by that is from the time that they apply, how long does it take for them to actually receive that award or scholarship, what their applications looked like, the logistics and staffing. Funding, budgeting, sponsorships, and partnerships kind of could all be rolled into one, but again, everybody does it different. So some are utilizing partnerships and sponsorships, others are not. What did their advertisement look for their scholarship programs? If they started a new program, meaning if there were staff that actually were part of a launch of a new program, what did that implementation look like? Did they have any unmet needs or gaps within their program? What did desired growth in their scholarship program look like for them? Did they have likes and dislikes about their current program? And were there any areas that they wished they could improve? One of the things that we are asked in our Leadership Academy is what things happened that were unexpected. And for me, I think in Parks and Recreation, we sort of expect the unexpected. However, I would say that as I honed in on this particular topic, the scope of the project actually could look a lot different than my original vision. As I met with each division, conversations, and they were truly great conversations, came up about low-income families that possibly couldn't afford to rent a shelter for a birthday party or something like that. We also talked through room rentals and facility rentals along those same lines. And one of my favorite conversations came from our great team at the cemetery, because one of the things that they are seeing is family members who unexpectedly lose a child are not financially prepared for that tragic loss, and would there be a possibility in the future to give some sort of financial aid to them in that tragic time? I think that for me, before I move on to the second piece, what I found is that potentially this could be a phased project. Perhaps we phase in, adults and senior recreation and programming, and then we look at phasing in more in the future. I'm not opposed to anything, right? I want the feedback, because I think that when we get there, we want to the presentations and the approvals, we want it to be what this community wants, first and foremost. But I also realize that the scope can be very, very grand, that the funding would be very difficult to reach, that sort of thing. So again, really fabulous conversations, but that did surprise me some. The second part is just the timeline. Of course, we have a hope and a goal and a dream to, by the end of our 6-month Leadership Academy, to have projects that are completely implemented, but that's tough to do. There's processes, there's approvals that we have to go through, and then there's always things that come up as well that just take a little bit more time unexpectedly. Building and modifying the application, of course, we do have a wonderful application for the swim lessons and the youth camps that we do have currently. However, I wanted to look at this and modify it. So what you're seeing, which is, I know, fine print, is a updated application that, of course, has not gone through approvals. It's just in the rough draft stages, but that does include that senior and adult recreation and programming. And I've also simplified the application some. So I did notice there was a few redundancies. We were saying the same thing multiple times. I really admired how some of the jurisdictions that I researched had a very simple application. Other things that I want to do in regards to the application is make it accessible in additional languages. Currently, our application is available in Spanish, so I want to make sure that that's known. But I do think that there are additional languages that we can obviously put this in, and we will wait for approvals for the actual new application and the program to begin before we take the time to do those things. Once those approvals are done, then we would also update our marketing materials and our website. So another part of the Leadership Academy is just the education that we're receiving. So as we are building our capstone project, we are also sitting through modules from really wonderful experts. Some of them have been in the industry for a long time. Some of them are speaking on topics that they have expertise in. So the modules began with the clarity of purpose. Some of my favorite takeaways and what I've learned through the Academy was to always be authentic in my pursuit of an idea or goal. That visionary leadership is necessary to mobilize many parties towards a decision. I think you know that as PRAC members. Also that good leaders are adaptable and they connect people to mission and values. In the public sector section, my favorite takeaways were meaningful change takes team collaboration. Leadership characteristics should include a shared vision of good. Individuals will need to know where they're headed and the coaching habit, knowing your team's strengths and building and developing their strengths always. In the diversity, equity, and inclusion module, we talked through the unconscious bias and how it shows up at work, looking for unintentional and unfair assumptions, preferential treatment, and exclusionary decisions, and disrupting everyday bias with the pause method, and how this can be utilized when we look at all programs and events. And you'll see the image of pause. Pay attention, acknowledge your assumptions, understand your perspective, seek different perspectives, and examine your options to make a decision. In the emotional intelligence module, I loved speaking about and learning about self-awareness and self-management. We talked through how an emotionally intelligent team results in improved communication, better job satisfaction, and greater work performance. And lastly, the continuous improvement module. Continuous improvement begins with situational leadership. Differing situations may take different types of leadership. These are just a few examples that I see in our, I'll say, department and my division especially, each and every day. So transformational leadership, servant leadership, coaching, or visionary leadership. And every type of situation or decision might take a different style. And treating the root cause, not the symptom. It's very easy, I should say, or sometimes the easiest thing just to treat the symptom, but good leaders would generally dig into that root cause. I love the imagery here because we have this, again, robust and wonderful scholarship program for youth, and you'll see them pictured at the top. And the hope and the goal and the dream is that one day we can have a scholarship program that serves a different age group in our community. This is a hiking group that gets to go on outings and hikings regularly that you'll see below. I probably don't have to point out to you the age difference in those two groups, but currently there are no scholarships for that lower group. I believe that this type of project and a more inclusive scholarship program would better serve our community. The next steps in order to do so would be to present to Oregon City groups. That could be to CIC, neighborhood associations, of course, present to commission, to again complete that application in additional languages, to update marketing materials and our website, to then advertise our new program, and to better live out the mission of our department of serving the community better. And that's what I had for you. Any questions for me?
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, let's open it up for questions or comments on the presentation from Cecily.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
First, I want to say congratulations. I know that's a difficult task, and I'm really excited that you did that. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
When you implement this program, is the dollars going to fund this coming from the general scholarship fund that we'd just be opening that up to more folks, or are you looking for additional dollars?
I think, and I don't know, Tom, feel free to chime in. You know, the current program is currently funded by the Parks Foundation. And the funding piece, which I didn't really get into here, and that really is one of the, I'll say, barriers of moving it forward. But again, I think that has to come through the approval process, what that looks like. We're still sort of brainstorming what that might be. This is a project we're working on, but we won't move it forward unless we have, of course, the desire from community members and the support to do so. But I do believe, yes, there would be a need for more dollars.
Do you know if currently all the scholarship funds that are going towards just that youth population, do they get used every year in totality?
And just kind of an understanding of where that funding comes from. Most of that comes from.
Oh, sorry, we can't hear you on Zoom. I don't know if someone's speaking.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now it's working.
There we go, I just need to have closer. So most of that funding comes from donated cans and bottles. If you see, I actually think there might be one in the lobby up here. If you see those in our different facilities, you'll see a sign that says donation benefit the Parks Foundation. That's where most of the funding comes from. There's also sometimes Parks Foundation runs some scholarship programs. They do like events for the fundraisers, but it's a relatively low cost.
Okay, thank you.
My mic is dead, so we're picking me up somewhere else.
Maybe there, yeah,
Maybe over here.
great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I had a really quick question. So you briefly showed the scholarship application as it is. In all of your research that you were doing, did you find that there were accessibility issues for people completing those types of scholarships? Because I know that that can be a barrier for people, especially when looking at it, it asked for like some personal financial information. When you're looking at a scholarship application like that, are you thinking about that barrier as well?
Yeah, I think that I automatically have that lens, so I appreciate you mentioning that because it's not something that is necessarily spoken from me. But being, the center manager, we are serving seniors and people with disabilities, and so we do look at that. I'm really grateful for the new website that the city has implemented. If you're not aware, there's been a lot of ADA upgrades for our website, and PDFs can be read aloud if somebody were to have, visual impairment. So I do think that having that application and a fillable PDF option would be good. That PDF can be read aloud to them again. But I think there's always ways to improve accessibility. And I think that, again, that's why these conversations for me, I get very excited about hearing feedback, hearing ideas of how we can make that better. So I appreciate that question, and I think while I have thought through some of those things, I think we can do better and we can do more work on that. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Opening it up, are there any other questions or comments on the presentation that we saw today?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question. Cicely, you're talking about, it's the Oregon City Parks Foundation, right? That's the source of the funding?
Correct.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, like, has there been ongoing collaboration with them about this?
Yeah, I'll take that, Emily. So we have kind of approached the topic with Parks Foundation, but that would be one of the next steps. What we're trying to build is this something that we want to pursue? And then we'll have those conversations. Now, and just to kind of clarify, we're not certain that this particular funding would come from the Parks Foundation in the future. It's just that the current funding for the youth scholarships comes from the Park Foundation.
Oh, understood. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know I've sat on a couple of their board meetings, and I know that they're doing a lot, and funding is very limited.
Yep.
And I don't know what the scope of this project is, but yeah, just that's good that that's all I guess kept in mind. Thank you.
Tim West, go ahead. I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So Cecily, I think that you have very ambitious goals. I think it's really good. I think there's a significant portion of people out there that really could take advantage of your program right there. Wherever you get your funding, I think that the cause is worth it, and to get people out to do events, to go on hikes, to see new things, I think is very important, and it's a good function of our park board. So yeah, I encourage you all the way.
Thank you.
Excellent. If there's nothing else, I don't think that we need any motion on this. It's just a presentation, correct? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Cecily.
you.
It's good seeing you.
Thank you, Cecily.
All right, on to our general business for the day. Tom, I think this is probably where I'll hand it off to you at. So we have the 5-year capital improvement project list discussion.
Yeah, and Corey's gonna take a moment here to kind of share the document that was sent out for review. And while that's popping up, if everybody can let me know if they can see that.
Yes.
Good. So yeah, let me just kind of try to set the stage here for what we're looking for and kind of how this discussion will proceed tonight. So, we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, gathering a lot of community input, a lot of community feedback through the Parks Master Plan, through some of these more specific master planning processes, and some of our community engagement pieces. And that's kind of all culminated in the document that you see here. So this is kind of really focused on the land use components of, what goes into the city's kind of master planning process. And really, we've had some of these conversations about, kind of PrAC's role and what we want to work on together. And one of those things that we identified was, I think at the time we called them development standards, but just like the idea that people should understand, generally speaking, what type of amenities and what type of park they can expect when the city comes to say we're going to build a neighborhood park or a community park. So that's kind of where we're going to start this conversation, is in this category of types of park development. But before we do, just so we kind of understand the process, where this will go from here. Tonight, what we're going to review is this types of park development, and then we'll look into the actual specific park inventory. You will notice on some of them, I'm sure some of you did, that I have little X's or highlights on areas, particularly on acreage. Those are just reflective of, sometimes we own more acreage than is actually available to the public. So I don't want to put that full acreage on here quite yet, because some of it is just like more natural space versus developed space. So we're just kind of going through our records to make sure that the number that we're putting on here represents where we can actually build these projects. There's a couple where we're still working through kind of information on that. But then where this will go from here, what we want to do is kind of get a group consensus on this, and we'll start sharing this out with our various stakeholders and partners to make sure that they're in agreement as well. And then our next task will really focus on prioritization. So if you remember in that Parks Master Plan and in the SDC conversation, we're looking at kind of this 20 to 30 year CIP list. And it's, $100 million rough estimate. It's a lot of money. It's a long time. How do we break that into manageable chunks, I think, is our next question. And so this is going to give us this guidance. This is really the narrative component of all of those dollar amounts that you've seen in the various financial plans and master plans. This is the narrative component that attaches to each one of those. And then our next exercise, once this is, recommended to City Commission approves, will be to look at prioritization and how we break that big, long project list into manageable chunks. What do we focus on next? Are there any questions with that kind of from a process standpoint before we dive in? Okay, hearing none, we'll dive right into kind of the first section, which is just types of park development. And you'll see here that we've got these lists, and I'm just going to go through the list first, and then I'll do some highlights on each one. So this is, general, in common parlance, this is language that is used by pretty much every park district or city when they're talking about parks. It's also very general, if you'll see. You'll see a lot of things like typically, kind of what we call soft language, because there are specific examples where sometimes the things that we say don't fit with the needs of the community, and we want to have flexibility to do that. So kind of going down the list, we've got our pocket parks, which are our smallest parks. Next in size would be neighborhood parks, then community, then regional. There's a special category known as a specialty park, which are, kind of unique specialized services. Then there are the more general open space and natural areas, minimally developed kind of conservation-focused parkland. And then there's the unique category of trails. So looking at those in kind of size comparison, if you think about a pocket park as anything is less than 3 acres in size. So an example in our system would be something like Dement Park is an example of one that is relatively minimally developed. There's a small seating area on Dement Park, but they can also go up to DC Lotterette is considered a pocket park. It's a relatively small acreage, but it has full park development. And when we look at those amenities, they typically feature some level of development or can be fully undeveloped. And typical amenities in a pocket park is going to be something like a small play structure, maybe some walking paths, some seating areas, native plantings, and even sport courts in limited circumstance. You're typically not going to have like a full-size tennis court or something like that, but maybe a half-court basketball. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So neighborhood park would be the kind of the next size jump. So a neighborhood park is typically defined as between 3 acres and 8 acres. 8 acres is a little big for a neighborhood park, but depends on the neighborhood. I typically think of them more in like even 6 acres for me. I'd be starting to push more for a community park, but again, it depends on the topography, depends on the neighborhood itself. These parks typically feature a mix of development and natural space, and typical amenities would be larger play structures, full-size playgrounds, things like that, walking paths, seating areas and picnic shelters, sport courts, restrooms, parking areas, dog parks even, and skate parks or ball fields in limited circumstance. A really good example of a neighborhood park that kind of has literally every single one of these amenities is Rivercrest Park. It's right in that limited acreage, primarily focused on the neighborhood directly around the park. It's not really something that people are traveling for, except for the spray park.
That's true. I travel there all the time.
I know. Well, and that's actually, that's one of the things we'll talk about is that's why we use soft language, because they can be, just an example from a past conversation about this. It was a neighborhood park. They really wanted a lot of parking and they wanted a restroom. And I was like, you understand that you're inviting a lot of people to come here. You don't want a lot of people to come here, but you want me to build amenities that are going to bring people here. So that was a fun conversation. Community parks then are kind of that next size. These are definitely like larger size parks. Anything that's between 8 acres and 20 acres is how we would define that here. Typically highly developed, also with areas of natural spaces. Just at that acreage, you typically have a big mix, but they are highly developed. And that's where you're going to have large or multiple play structures. Walking paths, seating areas are pretty common in all the different categories. Multiple picnic shelters, multi-use sport courts, restrooms, and that could be plural. You could have multiple restrooms in a large community park. They're typically going to have at least one large parking area, if not 2 or 3. Fenced dog parks would typically be found more in community parks, sometimes in neighborhood parks. Larger skate parks, ball fields, multiple ball fields. They can also serve as community event spaces that serve a variety of uses. So that could be anything from like an Easter egg hunt all the way up to a concert. These sites typically serve larger segments of the population in a variety of ways and uses. And I think a great example of this one would be Wesley Lane. So again, you can have multiple uses in the same park at the same time. That parking lot can be entirely full of people, have hundreds of people in the park doing a variety of activities in a variety of different ways. Then the largest in terms of kind of development and acreage would be what's known as a regional park. The one other distinction with the regional park, it's not just the acreage. So we would define that as something that's over 20 acres, but it also provides services or amenities that are utilized by the larger regional population. So lots of people who are coming here, more of a visitor attraction, a tourist attraction maybe, typically highly developed, and also typically have large areas of natural spaces interspersed throughout. In some instances, they may also protect or conserve vital habitat areas and provide access to natural amenities such as rivers, forests, trails, things like that. Typical amenities in regional parks would include, again, a lot of the things you see in community parks, large play structures, walking paths, all that. Boat ramps and launches, you typically tend to see those more in regional parks. Docks, habitat conservation areas, amphitheaters, community event spaces. That's typically what we would think of as a regional park. Our only designated regional park that is managed by the city is Clackamas Park. But another good example of a regional park in our area would be like Newell Creek or Kenema Bluff. Both of those would be also considered regional. And then a specialty park, just like it sounds, it's a park space that provides something that's very unique, typically specialized. Could be utilized by primarily residents, visitors to the region, or both. They can vary in size. You could have a huge park that is dedicated to one thing, but typically a specialty park is going to be smaller in size, Examples include, but are not limited to, boat ramps, docks, interpretive spaces and centers, historical homes, plazas. A cemetery is a great example of a specialty park. It's a space that can be used by the public for a variety of different uses, but it also has a specialized use. Amenities at specialty parks will vary depending on the intended usage. And then these are two new categories. We actually don't have these defined in the master plan from 2008. So open space natural areas and trails. So open space natural areas, they can kind of be used interchangeably, but they do have, kind of a separate definition. So we put both. Typically defined as minimally developed, conservation-focused parkland that is intended to provide visitors with opportunities to engage with nature. So they can vary in size. A small wetland that's primarily focused on conservation, but provides some level of access, whether it be a boardwalk or like a viewing platform, something like that. That could be a natural area, all the way up to large forests. Amenity at these parks will vary depending on the intended usage, but they're typically pretty minimal. So like a small parking lot with a trailhead, some maps, walking paths, signage, boardwalks, viewing areas, and lots of habitat conservation. Any questions about this one in particular? An example of this in our system would be like Old Kanema. I would consider an open space natural area. And then one of the things that we wanted, we were very intentional in adding this because it's one of the things as we look at SDCs and parkland acquisition, there could be opportunities in the future to acquire more open space and natural areas. And if we have that defined and that's part of our strategy, that gives us the opportunity to use SDC dollars towards that.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Tualatin Hills defines nature parks separately.
Yep.
Would that be what we would call a natural area, open space natural area here, or are we just not defining out a nature park because that's not really in the cards?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. They're very specific about what a nature park is, and it's very unique. And they have many of them. We don't have any currently. So I would say probably today we would include that in the open space natural areas. For those who aren't familiar with that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know more than I do. I'm remembering the last time I read their plan. A nature park for THPRD it has like almost like a play element to it. Like there's some amenities. They have these really cool, like they're like mainly natural spaces, but then they have like, you can build forts with stuff.
Right, like ability to go basically off trail and, or have playgrounds made of the natural elements or things like that.
Yeah, which is like, there's a distinction between nature play and natural element play. So like the playground, the play structure that's at Tyronis Woods would be considered nature play, but it's not natural play elements.
Right, sorry to get in the weeds, I was just curious
I appreciate
about
it.
that.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we can talk about. It's not, like I said, they have several of them, so that's why they define it separately. We would define it under this category for now. And then trails. I mean, everybody kind of knows what a trail is, but this gives a specific definition to it. A trail is typically defined as linear parkland, which sounds weird when you think about it, but that is what it is. Even if you think about like the river access trail, we only have an easement for the 10 feet off of the trail. So we own the trail and the 10 feet on either side. Anything past that is actually west property. So it's a linear park. It's, an acreage that consists of that 10-foot easement. McLaughlin Promenade, technically could be considered a linear park, but, probably not a trail specifically.
Oh, I think Joyce has her hand up. Go ahead, Joyce.
If I can figure the unmute button. So why isn't then Waterboard Park considered to be an open space natural area park? Because looking at, you assigned it as a community park, but there are no amenities at Waterboard Park.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the designations that were assigned are not final. That's what we're going to discuss next. Those designations came directly off the website, so that's just what they've been assigned in the past.
And since this is a new category, it didn't have that option in the past.
That is exactly correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk more about it when we go through the specific list. Waterboard is an interesting one, so that's definitely one for us to talk about. Yeah, so trails, it's kind of a simple definition, but they're typically utilized to connect different sections, provide pedestrian and bike access. They can be standalone parkland or part of a developed park, and they use a variety of surfacing materials depending on site conditions. The city has a trails master plan, which also informs where trails go in the city. But a lot of that time it goes through our parks, so that's why we have this section. Okay. Any questions on types of park development? Do any of these categories of amenities seem off? Does this seem pretty reasonable? Again, it's not locking us into anything, it's just giving people an idea of what they can expect.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't have anything. I think that there's a lot of soft language in here that makes it very, very flexible. I mean, I would have a question on the difference on trails versus the trails master plan you had just asked, but I think that that is something we could probably talk about at a different time, or did you want to?
So we will probably have another discussion about trails at a separate time.
Okay, yeah.
Because there are two master plans. This one's mainly focused on trails that exist
Within
our parks.
Okay, yeah, when I was reading through it, that was the one thing I was missing from the master plan that we talked previously, so. Yeah. Open a discussion on types of park development or definitions here.
No, I just add that I think the way you've categorized them by the acreage up front, kind of being that sort of probably the stronger part of that, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if we're looking at ways to explain parks in asking for SDCs and things like that. So I think it's done well, is my point.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we'll jump in. I guess I'll open it to the floor to kind of figure out how you want to do this. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read through all of them. I can go through each park individually. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say go through alphabetically and go through it, but I mean, we could also, I mean, just because that's how it's listed in the document rather than going by all pocket parks, et cetera. Or you can go through the ones you're most interested in that are, you know, should have the most debate, or I'm open to all. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Can you remind me what we're trying to do with going through them? Are we trying to make sure we all agree with the definitions written here?
Yep.
Okay, then I'll probably do it.
Yeah, that's really the ask tonight, is to make sure that we have an understanding of what's written here. Some of them, and I'll use kind of Abernathy Creek as an example of one that's probably not going to have a lot of development. You know, smaller park, undeveloped natural area with limited parking. We look to improve the parking area and ensure continued upkeep. But then you look at Atkinson Park, which is the next one. This is where we talk about, like, in the future, we'd look to improve the accessibility of the site with new walking paths, new natural themed play structures, a new restroom, you know, a planning process would need to be done. So I would say that probably want to spend more time on those ones that we're going to have more development in the future, so that we can at least have consensus on, you know, what's written here. Again, it's not saying the size of the play structure, just we'd like to have a play structure. Does that make sense?
Thomas?
Yeah.
Thomas, is this going to be a discussion on budgeting? Because it looks like some of these parks you have insight on what you want to go ahead and do. Others, it's like, oh, leave it alone. And some you don't have, to my estimation, enough said about what you want to go ahead and do with these parks. So tell us really this deep dive into each park. What would you like to see from this?
Yeah, and that's probably a good reminder on the budgeting side, which is not in this document. That's one of the things that we'll do in our next meeting, is talk about like what funds are available. We'll go back and bring that SDC list, if you remember the big project list.
Yeah.
We will bring that back tied with this narrative to explain. Now, that being said, a lot of what we've put in here, it's going to fit within that overall budget, you know? The development, I think of a place like Chapin Park. I think in that SDC project, it has something like $600,000 available for it. This is a rough number, don't quote me on it, but what we've described here would reasonably fit within that budget in the current economic state.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this is mainly just a simpler document that you can present to the city than the giant document we've seen before that has everything there. So the next steps would be prioritizing, as you've mentioned, and then moving forward with actually getting the work done based on that priority.
Yep. Yeah, and ultimately, like at the end of the day, what this document will become, this is the land use component of kind of this effort to do the Parks Master Plan. So when we go to when the city has its comprehensive plan, it points to the Parks Master Plan in a lot of ways, and it says like this future development is guided by the Parks Master Plan. That Parks Master Plan gave us a whole lot of data on what the city wants, what the community wants. This gives it a specific location, so when we go do a permit, when we go do an application for a zone change or something like that, this is the thing that gives us force and effect. That said, like, the city went through a process and said we were going to do X, Y, and Z at some park.
Say we go through them like you suggested.
Any other questions or comments before we kind of move forward? All right.
Awesome. Well, I will go back to Abernathy if we can do that. Like I said, this one's pretty simple. It's a relatively small pocket park located on Abernathy Creek. The main purpose of this park today is, kind of a picnic area, small trail. It provides some limited access to Abernathy Creek, but mainly a natural area, and that's kind of what we see for Abernathy in the future. Any questions on that one? Just feel free to throw them out there.
I have a quick one. I won't do this with 40 parks, I promise. Just for my definition of it, what is the difference between defining this as a pocket park versus a natural area? Because I've been to Abernathy Creek before. What is, just so I understand it a little bit better?
That's actually a great question. This was listed as a pocket park on our website. I might characterize this more as open space natural area, and I think that would be a fair definition. So if we're all kind of in agreement with that, that's one of the changes that we can make.
I am in agreement with that.
I was going to say, we just need Jacob to be here at all times to ask him how. Because I think we're going to have to make a motion to approve any change on this, so we can keep it running.
So we can run through the list and just keep a track and then do a motion at the
to
end.
approve all at once, yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Sounds
just
good.
keep track of the edits.
Yeah.
And then actually what we'll do is we'll actually bring this back to you revised, and you'll make a motion on kind of the final document.
Yeah.
Are you keeping track, Tim, or you want me to?
Please.
I know you wanted to vote on everyone. I know you did.
So our first one is for Abernathy to change that to natural space rather than pocket
Yes.
park? Okay. So I'm also on my toes.
Great, thank you. So moving to Atkinson Park. Atkinson Park is a 5.5 acre neighborhood park. It's located in that mid-level of the city, just north of the swimming pool. It's mostly a natural area today. It does have some small amounts of development. There's a reservable picnic shelter and tables. There's some play components and then trails. It's also the location of the Buena Vista Club, which is discussed in the facility section. We'll get to that later. In the future, Parks and Rec would look to improve the accessibility of this site. This is a site that's one of our older parks. It's got a lot of cracking surfaces. It's definitely probably one of our least accessible sites for those with mobility issues. It'd be great to have some new upgrades there. And then looking to replace that, Frank, some of those play structures are probably not up to code. Would love to have a new natural themed play structure at this site. There is currently a building that was a restroom on the park site. It is closed to the public because it is heavily damaged inside. So potentially a new restroom. It would be recommended that we would go through some sort of community engagement process for this site, just to make sure that the community has input on any particular redesigns. But this is just kind of generally speaking what we would look for. Any questions? Okay.
Can you move to the line,
Yeah.
start going on?
To this one?
Yes.
Yes, please. Can I switch with you? Yes. Awesome.
And just for a note on decorum, while we're sharing screens for those online, if you do have a question, just come in on it, just because I don't see the hand raised. So if you have anything on any of these, when Tom asks, feel free to come in.
All right, can you hear me now? So this will be confusing, and it's confusing for us as well because there's two Barclays. Barclay Hills Park is a 5.4-acre neighborhood park that's located in kind of that eastern portion of town. It's actually right around the corner from Mountain View Cemetery. Newell Creek Canyon is right around that site. It's a mix of developed park space and natural area. It has a basketball court, picnic tables, and a relatively larger play structure at that site. Future development opportunities would include any accessibility improvements to the existing amenities and maybe a picnic shelter. There's enough space that we could facilitate a picnic shelter at this site, and we do not have one currently. Thoughts on that? Great. Barclay Park is, and this is one of those ones where I have weird acreage. So it's about 2 acres, but there's other land that we own that's not really part of the park. Located at 711 12th Street, so just behind Father's Heart. This site is mostly natural area. Yeah, it's right by Barclay School. That's actually what we call it internally, so we can keep them tracked. It's mostly natural area, minimal development, lots of old growth trees, has some trash cans and a dog pot where we have bags and you can throw away your dog waste. It's currently utilized as an off-leash dog area. That's the main usage of the site. No major development planned at Barclay Park in the future. The terrain there is not great for development. It's pretty sloped. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Just a really quick question.
Yeah.
Does anyone use the Barclay School at this point?
That's actually a great question. I believe so. I think I see cars parked there when I check.
Occasionally I do too,
Yeah.
so I
There
just
might be,
wasn't sure if it's in use and the
Yeah.
occupants of that use that area.
I have no idea, honestly.
The Crayon Kids use that as a theater, and
nice.
I don't know if they moved down there by the old Kruger lumber mill now, or if they still use it, but that's historically what they did use. So, Thomas, you were talking primarily about the property that is west of the school. But how about that big football field that is north of the school? Is that city property?
That is not city property currently.
Who owns it?
I don't know, but I can check the property records and find out.
All right, well, it's interesting. It's been vacant forever, and it's been right there. It's part of the, well, it looks like part of the school. It could be a football field, soccer field, something.
Yeah.
But if it's already not owned by the city, that'd be a tougher hill to climb. All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move out to kind of the Kanema neighborhood. Kanema Children's Park is a 0.34 acre pocket park. It feels a lot bigger than that because it's tied to Kanema Bluff. And so it feels like a lot more park, but the actual land that the city owns is relatively small. It's located directly adjacent to Metro's Kanema Bluff natural area. It's mostly developed. It has some walking trails, some benches, basketball courts, picnic shelter and tables, a restroom, and a fairly sizable play structure. So future development of this site would probably include replacement of the restroom. If you've been out there recently, it's not the most accessible restroom. Be nice to replace that with a more accessible option. And then replacement of the existing amenities as they age. And that's kind of the general usage at that site.
I just have a quick question
Yeah.
on this one. This is what my house backs up to. I know this one pretty well. So just to be clear, Kenema Bluff Nature Park, that is Metro owned, and then we just own that kind of circle where the sidewalk goes, if I'm understanding it right?
That's correct, yep. So Kenema Bluff, owned by Metro. All those trails in the forest are owned and managed by Metro. Our section is just that kind of grassy area with the concrete sidewalk.
Yeah.
And even the gravel pathway is Metro property. Yeah, we have an intergovernmental agreement between the two for kind of co-management of that space.
My favorite parts.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So we're coming up to our first big park. So this one will probably be a little more discussion here. Chapin is a 18.5 acre community park located just off Warner Parrott Road. Nearby residents can also access the park by walking through some entry points at the different courts that are around kind of the back end of the park. The main usage of this park today, besides like kind of your daily usage of walking and kind of playground usage, the main usage is as our main like sports complex. Most of the sporting events in the city take place here at some point throughout the year. There's also the walking and jogging path and a large play structure. Mostly developed, current amenities include the list here that's bulleted. I'm not going to go through each one individually. It does also include a park host site with utilities that's just off the main parking lot. But future developments of this, if you've been out there recently, it's one of our older play structures. It's about 20 years old. It's kind of at that age where we're starting to not be able to find parts for it anymore. So from kind of that perspective, this would be a really nice one to replace in the near term. It also, just the size and kind of layout of that park would lend itself well to a universally accessible play structure. It's relatively flat, it's close to the parking lot, doesn't require a lot of construction work to create kind of an accessible space that would be utilized by children of all abilities. For an example of what that would look like, I would recommend going to Cook Park in Tigard. It's a pretty cool play structure that they've done recently. So that would be one of our big future developments. And then accessibility improvements to the ball fields and walking paths. That would be things like upgrades to the dugouts, the snack shack, the pathways, things like that that just make it kind of a, higher quality and more accessible option. And then replacement of, from what I understand, we used to have irrigation out on 3 and 4, but it doesn't work anymore. So it'd be nice to replace that eventually so that if you've ever noticed in the summer, half the park is green and half the park is not. It'd be nice to have it green, but.
Is there any consideration for adding restrooms to the far end where parks 3 and 4 are? Fields 3 and 4?
Yeah, so fields 3 and 4, especially if we added in irrigation and they were usable year round, I think we'd have to.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely something we can put on this list though.
That's a far walk when you got a 5-year-old.
Yes, it is.
My only other thought on this one was if there's any, and again, this would be a neighborhood thing as well, parking accommodation that's there. I've seen it jammed up and down the street through the neighborhoods. I mean, there's not space that's there, but just something that could be looked into given its access on the game days that are there. But I'm glad you mentioned the playground amenities because I was there a week ago and there's just a giant pit, it seemed like, where something was broken, but you couldn't, it was a pit. It was there with signs on it. So I'm glad that was mentioned by you on that one.
Yep, that is, finding parts for it is getting very difficult.
Yeah. When you mentioned an All Abilities Park, I should know this, does Oregon City have any All Abilities accessible?
Some of our newer, particularly places like Tyronis Woods, Hazel Grove, even Barclay Hills Park, a lot of those have accessible surfacing. They are designed to be more accessible. We don't have anything that I would consider universally accessible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a kind of a observation. I'm at Chapin Park pretty often, and I was there recently, and it looks great. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of improvements to like the drainage, especially by the parking lot, and where you first enter, kind of like by the bathrooms, going by the playground, which has been really nice to see. It still floods, but the drains are unclogged. There was a drain that I didn't even know was there that's been kind of cleared by one of the toddler parks. One thing that I have been noticing, there's two really lovely Gary Oaks, the Oregon White Oaks. There's one on the north side and one on the south side, and they drop a lot of leaves in the fall. And I think it was the one on the south side most recently. The leaves were left there for a while, and I was kind of happy about that, because it's an area that every so often, like, I'll see some bluebirds over there. There's a pair of bluebirds that seem to come back every year, and there's not a lot of areas in that park that like have opportunity for wildlife, and those two areas specifically aren't really used by people. They're kind of off the main path.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering if there's opportunity going forward for just like leaving the leaves and planting like I saw in a lot of these parks there was a note to improve or to increase the amount of like shade plants, and I wondered if that might be a good opportunity. And it's a very visible site, at least on the north side of Chapin, along that road. I think it's Warner Parrott Road. It's very visible, and so just creating like an area that isn't just grass, where people aren't really needing grass, would make sense.
Yeah, that's
Cut down on maintenance, and then it always kind of kills me when I see parks like rounding up all the leaves and just carrying them off site, when there's ample opportunities to like keep them on site, and like it's less work, less hauling around of things, less gas driving those leaves somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. If I'm thinking of the area, it's kind of like the island in between Warner Parrott Road and the parking lot where the big oak is. Is that one of the areas?
That's the one. And it's pretty sunny, so I mean, seeds in a sunny area like that, like, I feel like, funding for that could be very minimal, and that's a great spot to dump leaves.
Yeah, and that certainly would cut down on our maintenance at that park too. So I made a note of that, and we can add that in here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so jump into our first trail on the list, Clackamas Cove Trail and River Access Trail. It's just the distinction of the trailhead names. They're both the same trail. One is the trailhead at Clackamas Cove, one is the River Access Trailhead. So it's approximately 1 mile long, linear. This says Pocket Park, but what we'd like to do is call this a trail that can be accessed from Main Street near Clackamas Park or South Washington Street. Minimally developed, it's a mix of asphalt and concrete through mostly natural areas. It borders Clackamas Cove and the Clackamas River. Current amenities include benches, picnic tables, dog pots. Improvements would focus mainly on accessibility improvements to the walking path. As that asphalt deteriorates, we replace it with more and more concrete panels to eventually, hopefully, have a fully concrete pathway. And then interpretive signage, this is a mostly natural area that could really benefit and have a lot of potential for that kind of interpretive walking paths where you can take kids, do some education. We're using it in that way today. Actually, I think it's tomorrow. We have a group of middle schoolers who are going out there to work on some invasive plant removal and learn all about natural systems.
Nice.
But this would be some opportunities to do that on kind of an ad hoc basis. Okay. So jumping into Clackamas Park, our regional park. Clackamas Park is about 25 acres total. It gets its name from being located at the confluence of the Willamette and Clackamas rivers. Easy access from I-205 and 99E. Only regional park in the Oregon City Parks and Rec system. The amenities are listed there. You can see that we listed the boat launch. The boat launch, just a reminder, is currently closed due to safety concerns, but it is listed as a current amenity. So this site actually has a master plan that was adopted by the Planning Commission in July 2023. So that really informs a lot of the future developments at this site. That would include an expanded skate park, a new sports court, which would be a multi-use. It would potentially have some pickleball, some tennis, some basketball, a relocated boat ramp, a relocated RV park out of the floodplain. That was one of the recommendations in that master plan. Accessibility improvements throughout the park, a new community space, potentially an amphitheater, which would be pretty cool. A new restroom, new natural areas with interpretation and opportunities for artwork and different historical interpretation as well. And then I just put in there that further information on that can be found in the approved Clackamas Park Master Plan.
Yeah, we can open comment on this. I mean, I know we've talked about this park a lot and we've already worked through the master plan and everything, so it's hard to really change a lot to the current scope of what we're working on there, but is there any other thoughts on changing or anything that's on there for now?
Is the new RV site already identified out of the flood zone?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have an answer to it.
Okay.
We have a site identified.
Okay.
We had about 3 hours of conversation about it.
Whether or not that is the location it ends up, I do not know.
Okay.
TBD.
Yeah.
Do we have a timeline for when that master plan will be implemented or when they're going to be on that, or?
So
priority is going to be the next focus. But.
Yeah, we're kind of in the process of implementing. So the Clackamas Park work that we're doing right now with the archaeology for the boat ramp is kind of that first stage of that phase. So we're kind of into that implementation piece now. What we would be looking to do in the near term would be to start the design of kind of phase one. So we have this conceptual plan, right? Yeah. Now we need to turn it into engineered plans and construction documents. And so that's what we're hoping to do in the next biennium.
And a lot of the funds for that is also going to be, I can't remember the name of them, who presented a few.
Yeah.
Wes Good Neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, them.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about that partnership with Wes. The money that we receive from them can be used in that project area, and we have an agreement with them that we've kind of got this bulk of money that we've saved up over the past couple of years, and we can use that towards this Clackamas Park project, which helps reduce general fund impact.
Awesome.
Great.
Thomas, you were talking about the boat ramp and that it would go some archaeological studies on that.
Yeah.
I know that we have not come up with a final design on that.
That's
and
correct.
that, or at least this entity has not been approached to what kind of design you want. But I recently went out with a fishing guide to fish the Willamette, and we drove up the Clackamas, and he pointed out some very interesting things on the Clackamas boat launch right there and how it could be better. So I certainly hope that we can have the ability to consult with some people that use this like every day, these fishing guides that really know this river and make it very usable for the general public.
Yeah, and that'll be part of our process as we move into this kind of design development where we're taking that master plan and turning it into construction engineering documents. That's where we'll choose like the final location. We'll do a hydrology study to inform that and gather a lot of this input from the stakeholders through different, avenues and approaches.
So we'll be notified about that process.
Yes, and we are hoping to start that process soon. So I hope to be able to give you good news on that in the near future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick follow-up. I noticed that there was a sport court mentioned, and I can't remember, I attended so many meetings with PRAC in the past about the master plan, but what sport was it that they were trying to accommodate with this?
So it would be like a multi-use, it's like what you would see at Hillendale. So it has like the lines for multiple, Rivercrest has one too. It has the lines for multiple sports, and then has potentially like a basketball hoop. The location in the park would be kind of in that area where like the shelter near the horseshoe pits is currently located.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. And then, I guess a follow-up on the RV park. I know there was a plan to move it. Like, is that happening? Is it being moved to the other side, or where is that RV park gonna land?
So that is the recommended location, is the lot across the street. It's kind of there next to the McDonald's. That site is not currently zoned appropriately to do that. So what we're in the process of doing is rezoning it. From a land use perspective, there's multiple steps. This piece that we're doing right here is kind of step one. And then after the master plan piece is adopted, we basically right behind it will be a zone change to change that into an acceptable zone to move the RV park.
Okay. And then, for the RV park, I vaguely remember the presentation including information about, like the economics associated with an RV park. And has there been like analysis done on like if that's I know other, cities along the river don't have RV parks. Is that something that has been thoroughly looked at in terms of like, is it a service that's needed? Is it a service that Oregon City residents want? Is it financially viable? Is that a good use of funds? Has that all been looked at, or?
Yeah, so we do have an analysis that was done, I think that was last spring actually that I did that, which I can share offline so you can see what that is, or I can bring it back to a meeting if you guys want to see it all as a group. I'm not sure if we presented that. That was a commission request.
I know that we
I
presented.
remember it.
Yeah.
Okay, I did present it. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we do have that analysis, which can be updated and show like the numbers from the past year. You know, it's 6 of one, half dozen or the other. I have no opinion. If we want an RV park, we'll have an RV park. If we don't, we won't. It's kind of up to the community on whether they want one or not. It is not something that I've typically seen in a city park system, I will tell you that. But county parks, they have a lot of campgrounds, and they typically operate their entire park systems off the revenue that they receive from their campgrounds. So it can be profitable.
Do we charge any kind of fee for the RV park currently?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
$50 a night.
Oh, $50
Yep.
a night. I don't have an RV,
60.
so
Yes, yeah, if you're front row along the river, it's 60, otherwise 50.
luxury spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
It is, I mean, it's a decent chunk of revenue. I
Yeah.
think our current number,
I know I heard Tracy mention that when we were talking about the viability of the RV park and everything, she says, well, we just made $10,000 last month.
Yeah.
So I know that it can be a moneymaker, especially during, I think, certain seasons.
Oh, yeah.
But I also know that it was, how much money do you take in? And none of the expenses were considered with that number right there. So it seemed like it was more of a launch. And if indeed it's up to the community, how are you going to go ahead and do that and ask that community, should we spend almost $1 million in moving this park somewhere where it doesn't make financial sense or make a lot of money or matter to the bigger portion of the city? So I have issues with it, but I don't know if the rest of the committee does, and enough to make a stink on that.
I mean, I was just gonna say, I think that for this portion, I feel a lot of us feel the same way about the RV park. I don't think that anything that we're doing here mandates that they have an RV park. That'll be part of the design, and the next are spots that move on that will get more of a say in saying if there will be an RV park or where we'll be moving it to, correct?
yeah, so right now, again, what we have is a conceptual level design. We would need to go through a design development process. We'd actually have to have construction documents. There would have to be permitting. There are changes in FEMA floodplains that may affect this decision. There's a lot of steps that we have to go through before we are constructing anything at this site, including an RV park. And every single one of those points is a touch point with the community to see whether they are interested in what we want to build or not.
Yeah, because at this point, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, this is just saying that it can be used for that purpose and just kind of conceptually puts it there, not saying we will, in this document, put the RV plan.
Exactly.
Because I couldn't agree more with Tim and Emily on that portion that they talk about.
I'm in there too. I think part of it is that last line that says it is recommended that the RV park be relocated from its current position to a location, which I understand that is the recommendation for it, but I don't know if it would satisfy folks to add something like, if an RV park is included, it is recommended that it's moved. I'm not sure if that would be helpful.
Well, I think that before that question goes to the general public, it has to be, all right, we're moving this park just because it's in the floodplain, and it floods every year, and it's a huge expense for all this. The thing is that how much is it gonna cost to build this new platform, to build this park, to house 18 trailers? And then what is the payback on that? Will the city ever get paid back on that? So it's my question.
I just want to say, this whole topic of the RV park was beaten to death.
It sure was.
In the master planning of it. And I would like to just move on tonight because, you know, where our hearts are isn't going to make a damn bit of distance. I'm sorry.
Well, and just to remind everybody, like, this document doesn't commit us to anything. It doesn't, you know, it's just future planning. It just gets us to the next stage. So lots of conversation to come.
Yes, I feel we could have a full meeting of debate on the conversation at the RV park. If all members are okay, and we're okay with that phrasing there, is there anything else on the Clackamas Park that we have?
I didn't mean to open up a can of worms there, so I apologize, Joyce. And for clarifying that this was a potential or a possible plan, that language is very important, so thank you for that, and thanks, Tom, for providing all that additional context.
Yeah, no worries at all.
And this is our largest park. I mean, it's good to have the conversation.
This is probably the one where we're going to spend the most of our time in the future talking about. So next up would be DC Lorette. This is another one where I'm trying to map out the acreage. The parcel that we have is not necessarily the acreage that is usable. So trying to figure out what the best acreage there is. It's a pocket park. It's located on the block between 10th and 11th and Madison and Moreau Streets, kind of right there in that corner. Mostly developed site, so it has a basketball court, a natural play area, accessible pathways, and a lawn area. So because of that, it is one of our more recent parks. Any future development at this site would mainly focus on replacement of existing amenities as they age. Moving on to Dement. Dement, this is another one where just the records that we have it's very small. It's a very small acre pocket park located in the Rivercrest neighborhood area. It's quiet, it's undeveloped park location. It has a bench, it's a little bit of open space. You might not even recognize this as a park. If you drive through the Rivercrest area, it kind of looks like a bus stop, but it is a park. It's Dement Park. I can see from your face you don't even know.
I live in the Rivercrest neighborhood, and I'm like,
I'm trying to find it on a map, and I did this earlier too.
I will, this document, when it actually goes to City Commission, it will have a map on it.
I'll have to look.
It will be shared with you so you can see where all these are. No future development planned there. It's a relatively steep slope. There's neighbors on either side of it. There's not much we can do. So moving on to the end of the Oregon Trail, this one has two locations, so I do want to point out that this particular section is focused primarily on what we call the park component, so it's just the land, not the interpretive center itself. That's discussed later on. So we would consider this an 8-acre, a little bit over 8-acre specialty park. It has this kind of outdoor park component, and then it also has the interpretive center located on it. The kind of outdoor component has a variety of different accommodations for gatherings and special events. Current amenities include a picnic shelter with the accompanying tables. Obviously, there's a large parking lot to also accommodate the center. There's a stage, the grassy seating area, which kind of acts as an amphitheater. There's a walking and interpretive trails throughout the site. There's a restroom, and then there's some seating areas and benches throughout, as well as kind of the natural component, the different plantings and the historical components as well. Future development on this site would include accessibility improvements. This is a site where we have, it's an older site. We've got a lot of sidewalks that need to be replaced or reconfigured. We have some root uplift on some asphalt. That's definitely one of the main focus there is the accessibility improvements. There's potential for upgrades to the restrooms in the future. Parking lots could definitely be redone, restriped at some point in the future. New stage, new amphitheater that would just give us more options for the events that we do there would be nice. We've heard some feedback from our different groups that rent this center for events. Some shade structures might be nice throughout the kind of grassy lawn area. And then additional historical interpretation components and additional seating options. This is a site where we recommend that the site would go through some sort of community planning process in the future so that we can have a conversation with the community to determine what the best use of the site is. Okay. Moving on to Hartkey Park. Little over 1 acre pocket park. It's a few blocks off Warner Parent Road. Current amenities at this site, we have a small play area. There's 2 tennis courts and a basketball court. Kind of vegetation and open green space, have some opportunities for the community to gather, do some kind of field play. Future improvements at this site would include accessibility improvements to the courts and play area. They're a little worn. Be nice to repave them, resurface them at some point. Awesome, moving right along. This is where it also gets confusing because we have Hazel Grove and Hazelwood. So Hazel Grove is located a few blocks off Central Point Road. This is another one where I'm trying to map the existing acreage. We don't have that on record. We have it in our property records, but it's not quite the usable space. It's a neighborhood park located a few blocks off Central Point Road. Currently consists of natural play structure, picnic shelter with tables, benches, and a walking path. There's a mix of mature trees and then a large open space area for play. Future improvements would include replacement of existing amenities at the age, since this one is one of our relatively new parks. Things here are pretty new. So just kind of those replacement of existing amenities as they age, and future plantings to provide additional habitat and shade. We do have this kind of large lawn space, which is nice. It is used sometimes for practice for different sports organizations, but there's a lot of areas that we could also look to improve the plantings on. Okay. Hazelwood Park, one of our smaller pocket parks, a little under half an acre, located at the corner of Laurelwood Drive and Hartkey Loop. It's mainly an open grassy space area for play. Current amenities include a swing set and a slide. Future improvements would include additional playground components. We have space to facilitate more of like a structured playground there, and plantings to provide shade. Right now it's kind of an open field. It'd be nice to get some more habitat components into that one. All right, so we're up to our next community park, which is Hillendale. Hillendale is 16 acres, located just off Claremont Way. There's also a parking lot that's available on Roseberry Avenue, and it connects with Clackamas County's Red Soils campus via a paved walking path. Trails are lined with sitting benches and large grassy areas, and then a small creek, which is Mud Creek, runs through the park with an observation deck overlooking the wetlands. There's a list of current amenities there. And future improvements would really focus on replacement of the outdated play equipment. This one isn't quite as old as Chapin, but it is getting up there in age. Definitely one to plan for the future as we start to phase out and not be able to order parts for it anymore. Would really like to, this is another site because of its relative flat nature. The play structures are located close to parking lots. Could do really well as an all-inclusive, universally designed play structure. A replacement restroom facility. Cannot tell you how much I want to replace this restroom. It's one of the oldest in the systems. Really want to replace this one. And then Hillendale Park is a really big park and kind of that same issue as Chapin, fields 3 and 4. The lower fields have no restroom down there. So pickleball courts, baseball fields, soccer, they all have to walk up to the upper area to go to the restroom. Would love to put a single user restroom down in that lower section. It would also serve that play area. And then most of the rest of it would focus on accessibility improvements to the walking paths, bridges, and parking lots. This is a site that has potential to do some more habitat expansion, kind of along that Mud Creek component. It floods relatively often, especially in the winter. So it's not providing a lot of value. It's mainly just grass right now with some larger mature trees. We could plant and do some infill planting in a lot of these sections that would actually provide better habitat.
Does the accessibility that you mentioned, does that mean like fixing uprooted walking paths and things? Because that's something I run into quite often in that park.
Yes, yeah, that's what we mean by accessibility improvements. So it would either be completely resurfacing the pathway or redirecting in some cases to avoid mature tree roots. There's a variety of different ways to do that, but that's what we mean when we say that.
I remember last year there was a meeting or a presentation that the sport court was crumbling or needed to be reinforced. Do you know if that would be in here or if that's already in progress?
So that's one that we could potentially do. I recently chatted with the Hillendale Pickleball Club, and they were looking at maybe doing a Metro Enhancement Grant to help cover that. I'm not sure if that's actually in progress or not, but that could potentially happen in the near future. If it were not, that would be something that we would do.
Okay.
It's the anchoring around it.
Perfect. I was thinking of adding, could we add that in here? I just didn't see it on here, and I remember that whole meeting with them.
Another, sorry, go ahead. Online.
Thomas, I also noticed that you didn't put any permanent pickleball nets in there, so on Hillendale. So that's something that would be a tremendous enhancement for that park also. So one other really big thing as far as accessibility is that the county just put a huge parking lot right now, paved parking lot, right next to that entrance on that north side of the park. But they put a gate there, and that gate looked like it could be locked at any moment if indeed they didn't get along with the city. So I was wondering if you have talked to the county about keeping that gate open and potentially making a gravel walkway all the way over to the pickleball courts, because that is the closest parking lot to the pickleball courts that exist right now, and it'd be very convenient for anybody that goes up there.
I have not talked to the county, but that's definitely something we should talk about. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I will, we have some folks in the city who are working with them on their building permits, planning permits, and I'll reach out to them and see if I can get a contact.
Right?
One other thought, and I'm only commenting on the parks I visit quite often. But with this one, there is quite a large duck population in that particular park. And I wonder, is there any opportunity for interpretive signage around, that kind of habitat? And especially if you're starting to build the habitat there additionally, I could see people not actually liking taking away that tree space where you can get right close to the river because of that, not river, whatever it's called, Mud Creek, because of the ducks. It's a real kind of a draw, at least for my 6-year-old. So I don't know, maybe some interpretive signage as well.
That's a great idea. Any other thoughts on Hillendale? Okay. So moving on to John Storm. So John Storm is currently listed as a 1.5 acre pocket park. Depends on your definition. Love to have your opinion. It could be considered a specialty park, but it does have a variety of uses, so it might make sense to keep it as a pocket park, but that is currently what we list it as. It's obviously located on the banks of the Willamette River. It's just south of Clackamas Park, Clackamas Drive just before Sportcraft. The current amenities, which you would see if we weren't constructing the I-205 bridge, current amenities include a recreational and commercial boat dock, restroom facilities, and a reservable picnic shelter. Future improvements would include accessibility upgrades to those walking paths and restrooms, and then as well as any necessary repairs and replacement of the boat dock components as they age. Additionally, there may be future work to improve the capacity of the boat dock in order to receive larger commercial vessels. That's been identified as a potential opportunity in the future. So,
Corey, could you correct me? Did Ken send in a comment on this park pre-meeting when he looked at it? I know he's not here, but I thought John Storm was the one that he did comment on. Just while we're talking about it, if you could pull it up for record that he had.
I believe his comment was that it should be listed as a specialty park.
I would think that this should be listed as a specialty park.
Yes, yeah, his comment was that it would be listed as a specialty park rather than a pocket park.
Mine too.
Thanks, Tim.
Perfect, sorry. No, perfect. I had one note on what Ken had. Perfect. Thank you, Joyce. Was there anything else you had, Joyce? I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yes.
Okay.
Specialty park.
Specialty park.
Awesome. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to library park. So library park is another one that we list as a pocket park. You could also call this a specialty park. So it's a little weird to think about. The park is the grounds, the library is the building, okay? So library park is the grounds. Again, this is one where like I have the total acreage of the site, how much of it is actually a pocket park. That's what I'm trying to map on Google Earth. Current amenities include benches, walking paths, small playground, and a spray park. Future improvements at the site would focus on kind of those accessibility upgrades to those walking paths and replacement of the existing amenities as they age. Not a ton of room for us to do much else at the site, but certainly open to comments or
I would
thoughts?
also think this should be listed as a specialty park.
I think it kind of makes sense with the definition that we have. Like these amenities are primarily focused on serving the community that is using the library.
And it's very similar to the interpretive center.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Okay.
I kind of like it as a pocket
You could
park.
go either
personally.
way on it.
But yeah.
I know schools, like my daughter's school is near here. And they'll take kids before or after school, summer camps, will come visit that park. So I don't know if it's just concentrated on people visiting the library.
It's very true, especially with the spray park. I mean, it's a huge draw.
Agree.
Well, we'll put that one with a question mark. We'll bring that one back with a question mark. So moving on to McLaughlin Promenade, 7.8 acre linear neighborhood park that does include some areas that are not accessible to the public. So some of the land obviously down the slope is not accessible to the public. And then there's some kind of the forested area up here in Singer Hill that's technically part of the charter park or what would be the charter park in the future. Sits on the bluff above downtown, provides that connection to the Oregon City Municipal Elevator. It's our oldest park in the system, and it is also the site now for the Cayuse 5 Memorial, providing historical interpretation and a significant ceremony site for tribal nations. Future improvements to the site include a second phase of that Cayuse 5 Memorial and accessibility upgrades to walking paths, as well as replacement of amenities as they age. Most of the amenities here are going to be your benches, your interpretive signage, things like that. Again, not a ton of space for us to do anything new. The historical aspect of this site, we will primarily focus on maintaining.
So is that being listed as a trail or as a neighborhood park?
It's currently listed as a neighborhood park in our classification, but like I said, I would call it a linear park because it's not like an open field, but it's not quite a trail either. So if you guys have any thoughts on what you'd like to call it, I'm open to interpretation.
Because for sure it's not going to be having any sport courts or
Right.
or spray parks or a skate park or a ball field. None of those that a neighborhood park would have.
Yeah, and that's where I would lean more towards trail.
Any other thoughts on that? It felt kind of open-ended. I mean, it seems, yeah. I mean, I would probably lean trail as well, actually. It's just, nothing can be built there. And I feel if you label it a neighborhood park and you live in that area and you say, oh, this is a neighborhood park, you might feel a little bit upset when you view the other neighborhood park. So it makes me feel trails more appropriate.
But there's no downside in labeling any of these parks something other than a linear park or a regular park. So
Sure.
what is the downside? Is there a funding issue or what?
No, it plays into the categories of how SDCs work. So if you remember from our tables that we've reviewed in the past, there's kind of a level of service that we're expected to meet in neighborhood parks, community parks, all these different categories. So just the way they're categorized, that affects like what the level of services that we're providing in that category. It's not gonna affect our ability to acquire funding in the future. It just informs our strategy.
Well, then the Clackamas or the Promenade is probably one of our most visited parks.
Yep.
So whatever classification you could put it in that could enable it to receive the funding that it does need, I would put it there.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That might benefit the greater good, but also just for my own personal knowledge. You mentioned a little bit the charter piece. So is there certain guidelines to what you can and can't do to a park that has been identified as a charter park?
So the charter park doesn't necessarily play into like the classification. The charter park
Right.
just applies to the park overall. And for those who don't know what a charter park is, it's a designation that says you can't do anything to it without a vote of the people. So like we couldn't turn it into a road, we couldn't turn it into housing without a vote of the people. So there are a few left in the system. Most parks are charter parks. There's a few left in the system. The promenade is one of them.
But you can still do, like, add park amenities, things that make sense there. You just
Correct.
can't change the,
You just can't change it from a park to some other use.
got it, okay, thanks.
And it still maintains that park charter classification, even if we change it to listing it as a McLaughlin Promenade Trail.
Totally. Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's a totally separate classification. That's done by city commission.
correct.
Yeah.
I'd say based on Tim W's commentary, I would put this as classification as defer to you as you see fit for the right funding to ensure that we can get the things done that we need to get done there.
From that perspective, I would probably lean trail as well, because that would open up the recreational trails grant
Excellent.
as an opportunity to improve the surfacing. So that would be my off-the-cuff recommendation, but we'll bring back something for approval later.
And then another thought of that is if it was moved to trail, when they did those maps that show who we're serving, it wouldn't show that as a regional park where it's really not providing the amenities of a sport court or have that acreage. It would show that that is still needed for the people living in that area, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that was my main thought that I didn't phrase well earlier.
Yep.
When I mentioned it's moving into trail.
Great. Any other thoughts on the promenade? All right, so moving into Old Kenema, this is another one where we actually own more acreage than is accessible to the public. So what we have listed is maybe not the appropriate one, so still mapping that out. But it's a neighborhood park located in the historic Kenema neighborhood, mostly natural area. This is definitely one that I would say with a new category of open space natural area, we should probably call this a natural area. It's walking trails, has a lot of changing grades, picnic area. It has views of the Willamette River. Current amenities include a small parking lot as well. There's a covered viewpoint. A lot of the improvements that we would focus on in the future would include accessible pathways. I don't know if you've walked the trail at Old Kenema. It is steep. Don't do it in cowboy boots. I learned the hard way. It is a steep trail. So look for kind of more accessible pathways to the viewing area, particularly because of those grades. There's a lot of opportunity here for environmental and historical interpretation, good signage, talking about the history of the Kenema neighborhood, accessibility improvements to the parking area, and a lot of native habitat restoration. There's a lot of good habitat in there. There's also a lot of ivy. It'd be great to focus on cleaning some of that up. This site is intended to become a piece of the McLaughlin-Kanema project, so it kind of right along that section where the picnic area is and the view, it's supposed to come up through there, so that's just listed here in case, just so all these different plans all tie together.
So this is not the park that's next to the Metro Park?
This is not, no, this is on the other side of the neighborhood.
Okay, very good.
Sorry, we have somebody
We're gonna.
knocking, so we're trying to figure out what's going on. So moving on to Park Place Park. So Park Place Park is actually a very large park. It's 18 and a half acres total. It's located off Front Avenue in the Park Place neighborhood. Current amenities include natural areas, open lawn space, walking paths, an off-leash dog area, a playground, and a restroom. I will point out the 18.5 acres is a lot. A lot of that is forested, does not have access to the public currently. Park Place Park does have a master plan from 1995. It recommends future Phase 2 improvements that include a sports court, some additional walking paths, and an expanded play area. It's recommended that this site undergo a master plan kind of update and refresh to make sure that that matches the current intent of what the community wants out there. It's, you know, been 20 years, 30 years since we've done that, so.
Great. Wasn't there additional acreage recently added to that park?
There was, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's, I remember the dollar amount. The dollar amount was planned at 300,000, but I don't remember how much acreage, but it's forest. It's up kind of that access road further up.
Right, so yeah, a new master plan for the entire thing I could see needs to be done, yes.
I agree.
How much of the 18.5 acres would you say is usable in a way similar to Lake Chapin or Hillendale?
That's actually a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get you that number. I would say rough estimate, probably maybe a third of the total acreage. All right, so we'll move on to Richard S. Bloom Tots Park, which is located across the street from Library Park, just a couple blocks from where we sit. Relatively small park. Current amenities include a small children's play area, a restroom. Just for reference, the restroom is currently closed to the public, and some benches. Future improvements at this site would include replacement of existing amenities as they age and accessibility upgrades as items are replaced. Again, it's a kind of a relatively small area. There's not a lot that we could do other than just improving what exists.
You said the restroom is closed here because of damage?
We had a lot of issues with vandalism.
Yeah, don't you guys miss me when I lived across the street from there? And we were given a key, so in the morning we would unlock the bathroom and then make sure it was locked every night. And usually it was in the morning when one of the Canby area transit drivers needed to use the bathroom, and he'd be knocking on my door.
Yeah.
About 6:15 in the morning, yeah.
That's
But
great.
it worked really well to have the neighborhoods taking care of the park.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
neighbor.
We appreciate that. Thank you. All right, moving on to Rivercrest. So Rivercrest is a 6.5 acre neighborhood park located on Park Avenue, kind of the heart of the Rivercrest neighborhood. Current amenities include a spray park. There's tennis courts, a basketball court, t-ball field, playground, 2 reservable picnic shelters, a restroom, and then we have our 4 concrete cornhole pits, which a lot of people don't know about, so public service announcement for the concrete cornhole. Future improvements at this site include accessibility improvements to the existing amenities, a replacement of the spray park with a larger, more accessible option as it ages. That's another component that's, I don't remember the age of it off the top of my head, but it's getting older. We are still able to find parts for it, but there will come a time where it probably makes sense to replace it, just from,
I think it's probably like 15 years old.
that sounds right. I'm just not sure on the date.
If you were going to expand that, like a lot,
Yeah.
would that require a public input process and all of those things?
Yes, so there's two things that would be involved in that. The existing system, as it's set up, we actually couldn't build again. With today's codes, they have to be recirculating, so they're more like a pool. The current system just drains.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's kind of grandfathered in. So anything that we would build new would require both a new permitting process, and that would have to include going to the neighborhood associations and all those kinds
Got
of
it.
things for public input.
Additionally to that piece, is there any thought about the structure that's right next to the spray park that is rentable? I know that on very busy summer days, it can be a really hot piece of real estate. So being able to possibly expand that, I think would be of interest to folks.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what our goal is, and I don't know, does it say, it just says accessibility improvements to existing amenities. That kind of flows into that.
Got it.
We would expand out, correct me if I'm wrong, that one's a hexagon?
Yeah.
I think? Yeah, so we could expand that out and do a bigger hexagon.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Singer Creek. So this one is listed as a community park. It's 18 acres total, located adjacent to Lynn Avenue along Singer Creek. Mostly natural area, so that's kind of, we do have some development there though, so this is one of those spaces that's kind of in between. Could be listed as a community park, or we could consider it more open space natural area. Trails that connect the park to Bell Court and Holmes Lane. Current amenities include walking paths, natural habitat, and a disc golf course. It's our only disc golf course in the city system. Future improvements would include new trails through the forest, an improved walking path that connects Holmes Lane to Lynn Avenue, and an off-leash dog area. And for reference on that, there's a piece of property that's attached to this 18 acres. We call it the Singer Creek Annex. If you think of Holmes Lane, where there's new townhomes / apartments just went in, there's a big empty field right next to them on the other side, not Stafford Park, but the other side. That's actually park property. And so that's what we call the Singer Creek Annex. So that would potentially be a good space for an off-leash dog park.
Thank you for that information. When I walk by, I keep wondering who owns that.
That would be us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was actually just there the other day with my dogs, off leash, and I drive along Holmes pretty often, and there's often off leash dogs there. So I feel like in terms of a community need, that seems like a really great spot for an off leash dog park. And it's nice and long, so the dogs can get going. They don't have to go in circles.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this, Emily, but one of the conditions of them constructing those new homes, they actually put in a fence, and they have a connection into the parkland. So there's a gate that they can access. So all those people would have access directly from their neighborhood, which would be really cool. And if if you go into the woods, there's a trail that goes through there. It's a little overgrown right now. It was cut as firewood.
Oh yeah, that's where we went. That's how we got there.
Nice.
Yeah, it looks actually less overgrown than it did 2 years ago.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't know if the Oregon City Watershed Foundation did some work there, but yeah, it looks really good. It does get very wet back there. When I was there, it was huge flooding back there. But for a dog park, I don't know that necessarily matters.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun for the dogs. It's like an additional feature,
It's their spray park.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that trail, if we advertise that would actually provide walking access from that new housing development the whole way down to downtown, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to Sportcraft. I would call this kind of a classic specialty park. The main use of this is the two-lane boat ramp. I'm sorry, that says boat dock. We're going to change that to boat ramp. Boat ramp that provides safe boating access to the Willamette River, as well as a parking lot for boat trailers. Future improvements at this site would just focus on replacement of existing amenities and repaving of the parking lot. All right, Tyrone S. Woods Park is one of our newer parks. It's a 9-acre neighborhood park located off Myers Road in the south of the city. Current amenities include benches, walking paths, a nature play area, reservable picnic shelter, picnic tables dispersed throughout the park, a restroom, and a fenced dog park. This is currently the only fenced dog park in the city. The park does have a recent master plan. When the park was designed, it went through a master planning process that defines those phase 2 improvements as I think they called it a skate spot, not a skate park. But a skate park, pickleball courts, and additional open lawn space and walking paths. Since this is a relatively newer park, we'd probably just stick with that master planning process and do a public engagement as we would move forward with phase 2 improvements. All right, moving on to Waterboard Park. This is another one where it's tough to map the acreage. It's a very large parcel though. It's currently listed as a community park. I definitely think this is a candidate for the new category of open space natural area. It's located at the end of John Adams Street near the Armory. Natural area with viewpoints, walking paths. There's parking lot at the lower and upper entrance and mainly native habitat for wildlife. Future improvements at this site would include accessibility improvements to the trails, walking paths, and parking lots. So there is the potential. The land that's down at the lower parking lot is also owned by the city. It's the old shop for Public Works. There's the kind of that fenced off area. There is a possibility in the future that that land could get kind of wrapped into the park. So there would be some opportunities maybe to develop some amenities down there. That would obviously have to go through a process for that to happen. If we did that, that's what this last sentence is really focused on. If the city were to add additional land for development at the lower entrance, I would recommend that we probably go through a process because we don't have a plan for what we would use that land for currently.
Is the Armory still there?
I don't believe so. I think that's the...
Yeah, so I think we need to, the former site of the Armory.
Yeah, so, and I will tell you, some of these descriptions have been on our website since they were put up the first time.
So my current job is oversight of all armory facilities in the state of Oregon. I can tell you that it was deconstructed and tore down about 3 years ago.
Perfect.
So somewhere around there. I remember doing a tour of it 4 to 5 years ago, and I was shocked it was still standing. So it is a blank cement path at this point. The last time I was there, but it's been years.
We're going to call it near the former armory. Thank you.
But this would fit more of a linear park definition. And as far as linear, there should be a dashed line because that road really certainly needs a lot of work to make it accessible to the general public.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would actually call the park itself a linear park because, you know, there is all this land that is available to do new trails and things like that. The path, you know, what is traditionally known as kind of the walking path, which was the former road, that's certainly like a linear kind of trail component, but there are opportunities for some other development here. Yeah, kind of to your point, obviously it's a geologic hazard. It would be a lot of development that would be necessary to reconnect that in the way that it used to be connected.
It's one of the most hidden parks in Oregon City.
I agree.
And to put any funds into it for any sport court or any field of any sort would be a disservice to the neighborhood and the city.
Right.
So I think open area,
Yeah.
natural area, it's what it is.
I agree.
There's eagles actively nesting up there as well.
Oh, I did not know that. Do you know where?
It's in the tallest Doug fir. If you walk down, it's right after you go down that like 4 to 6 foot drop, that big major drop in the road.
Nice.
If you look up, it's on the right-hand side if you're going down.
That is awesome. I would love to put some signage out just to make people aware so they're not causing issues.
It's like a recurrent nest site. I think for like at least since I've been here, so like 4.5, 5 years, they've come back and nested there.
Nice.
And sometimes you'll see like 3 or 4 eagles flying around, not too far from there.
Can we put a trail cam and have our own Jackie's shadow?
I don't know.
Please?
I've tried to do this
So much
before and I
anxiety
don't.
about this. I couldn't have it too close to home.
I've tried to do it before. It's very difficult to do.
right.
There are
Yeah, the
actually,
logistics, they're in a very, very tall tree.
yeah, there are actually a lot of legal requirements.
I'm sure. I'm
around
sorry. I shouldn't have said that
nesting eagles.
officially.
That's
That
why
would be very cool though.
that would be very cool. All right, so moving on to the last park on our list, Wesley Lynn Park. So 17.5-acre community park located on Frontier Parkway off Myers Road in the southern end of Oregon City. There's a list of current amenities there. This is kind of your classic community park. There's a variety of amenities here. People use this in a variety of different ways. It does house our two kind of like top tier tournament level baseball, softball fields, one with synthetic turf, one with a dirt turf, 2 soccer fields, off-leash dog area, a restroom, and a snack shack. This is the potential, if you'll remember from our previous conversations, there is a potential here for a future fenced dog park. So you'll see that listed in our future improvements. It would also be nice to do the synthetic turf infield on the other ball field, just make a match, reduces the maintenance, makes them usable year-round. Dugout and bleacher improvements, expanded universally accessible play area. This is another area when we have nice big flat areas with lots of accessible pathways to them. A universally accessible play area makes a ton of sense. A fenced dog park. If you'll remember, that also included some habitat restoration there on kind of the edges of that wet space. Some shade improvements. There's a lot of open lawn space here. It'd be nice to get some trees in some of the areas where we can. Additional parking. So that would be kind of on that, what is that, Leland? Yeah, Leland Avenue side, where the host site is currently located. You know, there's potential opportunity in the future for some additional parking, and then accessibility improvements throughout.
Has there been any consideration for an additional like picnic area?
I think that would be really great. I don't know off the top of my head where we would put that right now, but certainly something we could think about.
Just a thought, because I know that they're in hot demand, especially in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
I had to reserve mine like months
Months in advance.
and it was an August birthday. It was
Well,
very
yeah.
hot.
That is one of our
Peak season.
hot picnic shelters
Yes.
because of the sink and the barbecues.
It's so nice.
It's so nice. We can discuss this offline or in another meeting, but I do have questions about, as we look to prioritize which park areas, or just prioritize the changes and updates. When you're talking about potential sites for all abilities or accessible park play structures, how would you prioritize the sites that you would do that? Would it be more parks that are on the older end and need replacing anyway, so it would make a good sense? Or something like Wesley Lynn that has a lot of traffic from a lot of different types of people? So I'd be interested to learn more about the criteria of how you decide how to prioritize where to put an all abilities play structure.
Yeah, and that's going to be a lot of our conversation in the next meeting when we talk.
Great.
Well, and that'll probably end up being 2 meetings because we'll have like an initial conversation, get some feedback, and come back. We'll talk a lot about how we prioritize that. You did kind of hit a little bit of the thought process there, though. We tend to focus, you know, when we get grant funding and things like that, it's very easy to look at like, this is an aged structure.
Right,
We
yeah.
need some support. That does drive the decision a lot of the times.
Okay.
Thankfully, like, when we look at the list of like our parks, we have several large community parks, and I think they're all high traffic parks, so even if we could replace 2.
Yeah, I mean, 2 birds with 1 stone would be ideal.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
Yeah, and if it's an older one, and yeah.
So just for time's sake, looking at kind of where we are, if you don't mind, I'd like to come back next time and do the facilities, unless there's any specifically that we want to talk about tonight. And I'd like to jump to the new parks facilities.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Open to comment? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. So new parks and facilities, these are either identified in existing plans or represent land that we already own. So the first one, Claremont Way, is a piece of property. It's mainly open space. It's currently owned by Oregon City Parks and Rec. It's located along Claremont Way, just off Malala Ave. If you think like where Burgerville is, it's that big open field, kind of right around. I think
Next to
it's
Joann's?
Yes, that's what we call it, the big open field next to Joann's.
Okay.
It is planned for development as a potential new park. It was listed as a community park. I actually don't know that the acreage there supports a community park, but that was what it was listed as. Planned amenities there. One of the challenges of that site, if you think about it, if you know the site I'm talking about, you will know immediately what I mean. If you don't, drive by, there's power lines.
Yeah.
And just from prior experience of working under BPA lines, they have restrictions on the height of things. So we would mainly focus on kind of like amenities that we would actually build into the ground. So things like a bike pump track, a skate park, fenced dog park with picnic areas, benches, and walking paths. We'd keep it kind of low to the ground. Probably wouldn't have many plantings here because when the trees grow up, they just get cut down by the power company.
So depending on acreage, are we looking at possibly changing that to a neighborhood park designation?
I would probably recommend
specialty.
that. Yeah.
Depending on if you put in like a pump track or things like that?
Right.
Okay.
With that space, with some height requirements because of the power lines, it also has a possibility of having like a covered picnic area too.
Definitely. Picnic shelter would be totally fine because it's
Yeah.
a fixed height.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not tall enough to affect the lines. Plantings are where you really get in
Yeah.
trouble.
Sure.
Awesome. So this is also really confusing because there's already Park Place Park, but there is a section of the city that's been designated as the Park Place concept area. It's just off of Holcomb, and it's an area that it went through a master planning process. There are 2 parks that are in that planned development area. So there's the South Village, which is a neighborhood park. It calls for dedication of 3 to 5 acres of land within that area to be used as a neighborhood park. This is just a list of those likely amenities that we would see. Because there are 2 parks in this area, you can see that in the North Village. It calls for a community park, 8 to 10 acres. Because of that, we would recommend going through a community planning process so you don't have overlapping amenities, so that we're building thoughtfully, that we know like what we're trying to build here. There are no current designs for what these parks would look like, and we don't have a fixed acreage yet. Same thing for Thimble Creek. This is the area that's kind of identified as like the Oregon City Golf Course, kind of out in the Beaver Creek Road area, Thimble Creek concept area. This is actually really unique. I actually have not heard of this before. It calls for a pearl and string approach. So it's a series of 3 small parks. They're like between 3 acres, and the minimum size is 2 acres minimum. The combined size of all of them is 10 acres, and then they have like streetscape walking paths in between them. So it's actually a really cool design.
Yeah.
I've never quite have heard anything like it. But because of that uniqueness, this is another one where, again, we'd have to have some sort of planning process to think out. You have these 3 unique spaces that are of varying sizes. How do you appropriately plan amenities so that you're providing community need, but also not overlapping?
I believe there is something similar in the THPRD park system.
Really?
I believe at least 2 that are strung together across a asphalt path that connects them.
Nice.
You mean in Tualatin?
Yeah.
I believe so. I was gonna say, that reminds me of a Tualatin Park I've been to, where
Yeah.
you bike in between the parks. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
And then as part of that development as well, there's a second piece of that that's called East Ridge. It's more of a conservation area, so if the city were to take on this property under their ownership, this would end up being a natural area, open space. There's a couple different options. You could also do that as a private ownership with a conservation easement. Again, This is merely concept at this point. There's been no final siting of this plan, but the original Thimble Creek plan called for this area to be conserved as natural space. There's another one on this list. You'll see South End concept areas listed with no information underneath it. We're still gathering information on what actually they called for in this plan. So you'll see more information as we get that. And that'll kind of be built out. And then the next two, kind of the Myers Road, Caulfield area, and the Partlow Road area. If you remember in the Parks Master Plan, there were those equity maps that outlined, particularly for neighborhood parks. These are two kind of general circles on the map where we're missing neighborhood parks. So they don't represent any specific property, just kind of a general circle on the map. Again, this document, when it is finalized, will have an actual map, and it'll have the circles that show that kind of general radius. If you think about it in kind of geographic terms, it's like somewhere out kind of near TSW Caulfield neighborhood, and somewhere out on kind of the south end area of town.
Are there any open spaces currently that parks might be interested in acquiring in those areas? Because they're, I mean, like, I'm thinking Partlow Road, that's pretty, like, built.
Yep. So these are areas where we would probably have to target land that is within the UGB, but is not currently built, and then wait until it's annexed into the city.
Gotcha. Okay.
Remember again that the timing on this is like 30 years.
Yeah.
And then as part of the master planning process, the level of service analysis identified 3 miles of trail are needed somewhere within the city to meet our growing population. Kind of the general guideline here, and why we will come back later and talk about what the existing trails master plan says. That's where we'll focus our efforts. You know, there's already an existing master plan that says where we should focus on trails development. We will look to prioritize acquisition of those lands in the future. Excellent. And then the last item is the Aquatics and Recreation Center. Again, the Parks Master Plan identified a deficiency in that planned level of service for indoor recreation as the population continues to grow. So the recommendation is that we should consider planning for a new aquatics and recreation center that will serve the continuing needs. The recommendation, just to kind of like maximize the opportunity here, would be to consider acquiring enough land to construct an aquatics and recreation center, and then kind of like a youth sports facility nearby. That was identified as, both of those things were identified as high community need. You see that in a lot of jurisdictions. Happy Valley is looking to build one of these, where it's kind of it's a joint park aquatics and recreation center. And again, we would go through a public process to identify where that would be, what the most, the location that makes the most sense, and then look at available land.
Great.
Awesome.
Or are we there? I mean, I'm ready for the next, I don't know.
So I will tell you that it is probably going to be one of our goals over the next 2 years to at least begin that planning process and to start gathering community input on where this site what this site would look like and where it would be.
Great.
Exciting.
All right. That is, do you have anything else, or is there any open comment for general business? If I'm understanding correctly, the next goal, we won't be motioning to approve anything today. We'll look through the changes we've talked about as we went through the project, and then next time as we see those, then we can do a motion to approve the document, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, so this is really just kind of all level setting, and I apologize, it's a lot of information, but.
It was great.
No,
Good information.
It was good conversation and good information. Thank you for gathering it together
Yeah.
for us. And thanks for sending it ahead of time. It was really nice to review.
So next time we'll really focus on prioritization, and we'll match this with our SDC lists that we've seen, the CIP lists from our past meetings, and look at the next 5 years and see what we want to prioritize.
Great. Any additional comment or questions in regards to anybody from the advisory committee?
I just want to thank Tom for being so thorough and
Yes.
getting this out ahead of time so we could take a look at it. And yeah, the feedback that you've given is just really helpful, honestly. Like I've been on PrAC for a couple years. This is, I think, my third year. And yeah, it's really nice just to have an ongoing collaboration with parks. And I feel like, you know, after a little while of not feeling like that was happening, it's really nice to have that now. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think all of us.
And I
appreciate
echo that too. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. Not officially a second, but yes, me too.
Thank you.
Committee recognized thanks to Tom for talking for the last 2 hours.
Thank you.
All right, now during the presentation that Tom was giving, we did get a public comment form. Before we move to member reports, I would like to move to recognize James Nasita. If you would like to come and make public comments for the capital improvement we talked about, and you can have your 3 minutes, sir. Welcome in.
Thank you. My name's Jim Nasita. I live in Oregon City. So tonight, the YouTube algorithm spit up something interesting for me to listen to while I was doing the dishes, and that was this meeting. And since I live just down the street, I thought I'd come down to chat about something that I've thought about for a number of years, and since we're going through this process now, I thought I'd take the opportunity to introduce a discussion. What it amounts to basically is a proposal for an insertion into the narrative on Abernathy Creek Park. And hopefully an elevation in priorities, and it's exciting that you guys are going to be discussing priorities soon. So in the Trails Master Plan, there is a trail extension running north along John Adams, down by where Abernathy Center is in that area. And the trail extends past north of 15th Street and actually crosses the Abernathy Creek into Abernathy Creek Park. So it's something that's been in the Trails Master Plan for quite some time. And in fact, that section of, that little stub of 15th, the stub of John Adams from 15th up to the river itself, the creek, was actually vacated maybe 20 years ago. And if memory serves me correctly, and I could dig it out and mail it to, or email it to Mr. Kissinger for distribution, the city actually put, I believe, a condition of approval in the vacation ordinance that the entity to whom the vacation was made have a reservation for the future if there ever was a bridge going across into Abernathy Creek Park. And I love Abernathy Creek Park. It's meditative, it's beautiful, it's quiet, and it's just one of the underused gems in Oregon City. And what brings to mind trying to raise this in priority is recently that neighborhood that area has become quite like a food center. People go on breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. And it is so close to Abernathy Creek, park, but so far, because now you have to go way up and to be able to feel like, have your meal and then take a walk to exercise and walk off the meal and, enjoy, 15 minutes of meditation in the hubbub of the city. I think as far as getting a real bang for your buck, you could impact a real lot of people positively with an investment like this. I just, hope you might consider elevating that bridge into the narrative and when you do your CIP priorities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
If you do have that information, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
I do have, I'm so sorry to interrupt, and it's not on the agenda. Before we jump into member reports, if you guys have them, I just wanted to continue the conversation from last month a little bit. We do have we have 5 candidates for PrAC. One of them does not qualify because we already have 2 people represented from that neighborhood. So there are 4 applicants, And we have one open seat that would end, the term would end this December. The other open seat would end December of 2027. If you guys are okay with it, I would like to schedule these people for interview, but I would want your recommendation on doing so. That would be at our next meeting as well.
Packed meeting.
Corey's brought something forward for open discussion. I know we spoke about this last time. I am for this, just I think adding in more voice in the community, people who are passionate about the parks, who want to get involved. I think that is a great thing. I'm open to maybe starting the meeting a half hour earlier to allow for the interviews, given the time restraints, if people are open to that. But I would be for this, even knowing the term for one of them would end in 5 months. That just gives you that head start. So we have all of these things. We're actually working now with Tom, with the new Parks and Rec director that was hired. Just while it might seem a short notice, my first term here, I think, was 6 months before I was re-upped for the next 3. So it's something that I would be open to while we have people who want to be involved, so we don't have the situation where we have vacant seats. But I also think we have a great group that we have now, so I would understand not wanting to disrupt the balance with that. But personally, I would move yes, let us interview them next time.
I was like,
I'm
wow,
open to-
thanks
sorry,
for being
I
super
realize
vague.
I just ended on saying both things.
You're all good.
And I need to be there, but I would be open to having the interviews and, accepting both applicants, if they hit the qualifications everyone decided.
Yeah, I would officially make it a separate meeting. So we would potentially start 30 minutes early, if that worked for people.
So we would have 2 meetings on the same day, 5:30 to 6, and then 6 to 9? Okay. I am also for that. I think it's important to note that it's if there's a right fit, right?
Yes.
I really think you said that well.
Correct, yes. Not, we
Yeah,
don't
no
have
obligation.
to
Right.
bring anybody in.
But I like the opportunity that we've brought in more people.
This
Go ahead.
choice here, but is 30 minutes enough for 4 candidates?
We can make it enough. We do have the questions set. I think 15 minutes actually for an interview is probably safest.
I could see us doing 10 minutes an interview, but then that would be 40 minutes.
Right. Yeah, unless we start our regularly scheduled meeting at 6:30 instead of 6.
I'd be fine with that, and do we have to start at 6:30 then if we say that officially? Like if we were to get done early, could we start early?
I'm not
We have to advertise our starting
Yes.
time.
Yeah, we
that was
do
my
have to,
question.
yeah.
Thank you.
I actually have the bylaws pulled up because I'm going to ask another question here in a second about what date the meeting has to be on. But yes, we do have to announce it, I believe,
Yes.
at least 3 days ahead of time. So we would have to set it up. So we could either do 5:30 to 6:30 and then do the meeting after that to give us time, or we could just do 6 to 7 and then start at 7, which used to be our old starting time. But
Right.
I'm
Or
open.
5:30 to 6:15.
That's what I'm thinking,
Oh,
Joyce,
yes.
because
Yeah,
I'm not
Joyce,
trying to
thank
be
you.
here till 10.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, 5:30 to 6:15 is about what I was thinking, but
Yep.
I'm, of course, very
I'm
flexible.
on board with that.
Whatever works for you all.
One thing that we might keep in mind, I know in the past, not all applicants have been available to come at the time set. Hopefully, all the candidates would be able to attend, but like when I'm on the NRC and we scheduled our meeting around when the candidates were available, so, yeah, hopefully that timing works out.
Yeah, I hope so. Knowing that it's a mid-year type thing, I think we're just going to offer the one time, and if it doesn't work, then I would encourage them to reapply next year.
I'm
Yeah,
supportive of
that
that.
makes sense. That sounds good.
Is there anybody opposed to having the interviews next month? Again, I don't think we have to have this as a motion portion, but I believe that we can have it as an open discussion. While we are on the discussion of next month's meeting, something I was proposing prior, given the meeting is on the 24th, I wanted to see if and if people can check their calendars here, if they're open to moving the meeting either on the 17th or on May 1st. Usually we have it on the last meeting, sometimes we have it on the 3rd. So I'm just asking if we can move the meeting 1 week earlier or later, or if that would prevent anybody from attending the meeting for next month.
The 17th would work well for me, is the best one for me.
I am unable to attend the 17th. I have a work commitment.
I also can't attend the 17th, so the next week would be better for me.
Again, I would have to check other meetings that take place in this room, to see if it
Is it because you can't attend on the 24th?
Oh, yes, I should know that I have to travel to DC that day with everything that's there. So I'm just asking if there's flexibility. If not, I will try to attend virtually. I know Ken will be here next month as vice chair, but I wanted to open it up just in case, given everything we're covering right now. So if it's not a big deal.
I can't do it on the 17th either.
How about the 1st, folks? Is there anything against the rules?
That's what I'm not sure.
There's nothing in the bylaws that says it. It says we shall meet 6 specific times. So there's nothing with us with changing the date. We've done it a few times prior.
It's just,
As long as we announce it to the public 3 days prior to it. So I would hope that then in May, we would do May 1st and then potentially May 29th. It would still be 4 weeks apart, just with a long month there.
as long as the dates are available for the room. I would
Otherwise,
think.
we can
I
just,
attend the 24th by Zoom, but May 1st I am not available at all.
okay. We'll just keep it the 24th.
It does look like that also is it's I know that up at Robert Libkey, it's reserved for a budget meeting.
Oh, okay.
Our large budget meetings that take place. So,
We'll keep it on 24th, and I will try to attend virtually. I just wanted to ask while we were having the conversation.
Sure.
So sorry to extend it to
No
everybody
worries.
there. All right. Getting to the end of it here. I feel like we're in a good long one. So can we move to member reports? I will open the floor.
I was at Hillendale this week. The softball or the baseball softball field looked excellent. The facilities looked pretty darn good too for what they are there. Yeah, so I was really, really happy with how it looked, having not been there for several months. So.
I do want to give a shout out to the parks team for that. So we were able to take advantage of some of this nice weather and put in the turfus, the infield material that makes it safe for the players. So I think actually you just sent out, we have some photos if you want to see after.
It looked really nice, and the girls were very thankful.
That's great here.
I was going to give a shout out to the resources fair that took place at the Pioneer Center. I was able to attend that, and it was excellent. I learned a ton and got like 500 pens, I want to say, from, it was crazy, everything that was there, but I hadn't heard of us having that event before, and I thought every group that was there was really passionate about what they can give to the community, and it was just really fun to see, all the people that were out there helping. So I'm glad that was there, and I hope we do that every year. Any final member reports? Okay, I believe our next scheduled meeting will be April 24th.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
and the Spring Bazaar is happening at the Pioneer Center the first Saturday of April.
It's like we're planning ahead of time.
I know, April, coming right up.
Okay, that'll be it. We are adjourned.
Thank you.